This last exercise of 4 that all told will take perhaps the student a half hour to generate these series of studies at different sizes. It's going to introduce another level of control, and that is the idea of value shift in order to create the suggestion of distance. And also the application of the warm color, in this case it's going to be a burnt sienna, and the same blue as the cool color, the Prussian blue, which we've used on the 3 previous exercises. The idea is that the burnt sienna is going to introduce another level of value. We're also going to apply it in a half and half mix, where the warm color is going to be applied on the top half of the form, the blue color on the bottom half of the form, and then intermixed in between in order to create certain effects. I'm also going to be working with 2 different brushes, a round and a flat, and the way in which you use your instruments also becomes important. It gives you flexibility, it gives you a way to represent different types of vegetation by using brushes in a certain way. In this case, I'm going to be applying the brush in fairly dry fashion. There's not much moisture on the bristles of the round. And I'm going to actually be creating a hedge shape by just rotating the brush, like so. And now adding just a little bit of moisture, create a much lighter effect in the background. Adding more moisture to create a very, very pale indication of light. And maybe even a different texture by just adding in some strokes like so. And let's add in another larger tree form way in the background. Just a pale indication of something that's intruding on the previous composition, but suggesting something that's drooping in or somewhere else. Very pale. Now with the flat, we're going to be introducing again, with no moisture other than what's on the palette itself, is just working the base of this shrub that you're creating. It's also helpful in shaping vegetation, just to experiment and recall from memory. If you don't have a convenient studio, kitchen, dining room window to paint vegetation, to make up different landscape forms. Gardeners probably will have an even easier time with this, but it gives you an opportunity for exploring your imagination from your own visual experiences. Let's give this some directional qualities that suggest a groundscape, some shadow perhaps, and also bring the eye back to the vegetation on the far right. Now I'm just diluting this high chroma blue, suggesting a shift in hue, and then having it merge with that small element on the right hand side. Now I'm going to mix these 2 together. I had an upper crown of the burnt sienna, and I had a bottom area of the Prussian blue. Now by diluting the water, leaving some space, working with the flat, trying to respect the flow and curl of the brush, the round brush, which is creating this sort of dry brush effect of a skipped quality. I'm bringing the Prussian blue down from the sepia area into the Prussian blue base, and vice versa, using the round or the flat. I'll use the round this time. Bringing some of the sepia, the raw sienna, the sepia color, down into the blue base, and leaving parts of it totally blue and leaving parts of it totally sienna. And then there's a suggestion of light, very, very pale, maybe adding in a tint of color here, a tint of color here. And what happens by mixing these 2 together, not only do you get the suggestion of green, because there is a yellow in the burnt sienna, you also get a suggestion of gray, because of the complementarity of the neutral burnt sienna and the high chroma color, which is the Prussian blue. As it's drying, the possibility for Now mixing the two colors on your palette to create more of a gray effect and also to then create more texture is available to you. The idea of the exercises is for you to explore without any attachment or any a degree of results, to see what you can do by intermixing the color on the palette as well as intermixing it directly on the paper. There are many ways to use watercolor, all of which are very exciting. It gives you an opportunity to create certain effects, and the more that you can experiment and play with these different effects, the better your work will be in the final result and in the immediacy of field conditions or in the many problems that come up in studio conditions. Always being aware of the dilution factor, always being aware of how much moisture is on the brush, how much moisture is in the puddle of color that is on your palette will determine the strength of contrast, will determine the power and impact of these little studies. And that in turn will inform your completed work when you get to a much larger production. And let's not do that. There's also the possibility of actually lifting the color if you find that that's not satisfactory. The more you go beyond the control of these studies, the more and the looser that you can be, the better your work will be informed for other opportunities later on. If I wanted to create a more of an atmospheric effect, again, very, very pale dilution, using those very same colors to create a shaded effect on the very pale burnt sienna with a very pale application of the Prussian blue, like so. And then you have quite a range of depth, value, hues, and shadows in contrast within one little study. Your experimentation going through your yellow, warm spectrum and your cool blue spectrum will give you a huge variety of tree colors and vegetation that will help inform your drawing, make you a better painter, give you more confidence.